Okay, guys, so welcome to week 3. This is a recap of how training went over the last week. If you're new to the channel, my name is Stephen Scullion. I'm documenting my journey to the Paris Olympics training. It's kind of like a video podcast, but it goes through the week. And if you've watched the previous episodes, hopefully there's some tips you can pick up on what you could do with your training, perhaps how you should be analysing your training at each week, and if that's something that's important to you, it might help your running in future. It might help how each week of your training goes. And at the end of the day, to run a better marathon, it's the sum of everything that you're doing in training, but not just the running, all the support work, and that's the kind of stuff that I go through. And that's going to help you in turn with your own training, have a look at what you're doing and do like a similar recap. Or if you were able to give your training, for example, a score out of 10 every day, lifestyle training, when it comes to the next race, you'd know exactly roughly how it's going to go if you had a good plan put in place. I think a lot of people get to these big races, myself included, and you think you did a good job of the training, but you don't really know because the brain forgets quite quickly. And so hopefully by me documenting this, it helps you guys with your running. But I also think it's going to be one of the keys to me doing better in the next marathon is that at the end of each week, I have to hold myself accountable to, did I do the training well? Could I have done something different? And then it helps me look over the next week, okay, well, what should I work on? What sort of things should I improve? And so to get stuck into how the training week went, I did 4.3 miles more than the week before. This week I ran 74.3 miles because I took a little bit of time off, probably 3-4 months off full training. I've been I've been building the training back up. Why I made a joke there about gradually is 74.3 to most people in week 3 is probably crazy. But that's probably one of my, I don't know, like call it greatest assets, is that my ability to just get stuck back into training. It's probably like it's not a complete win-win, because what my body tends to do, and this is actually a really important topic. I'm always going to get sidetracked on these podcasts, but this is important. What I used to govern as being like the most important factor was not getting injured. So I used to sort of think, if I'm not getting injured, that must mean that the training that I'm doing is right. And you're probably sitting at home either confused by what I'm saying, or you're going to kind of agree with me. People think that because they can handle a certain amount of training, that they should. Or they think that injury, until the point of injury, I was automatically absorbing everything that I was doing. And when you word it that way, that's when things change a little bit, because that's when it's kind of like, yeah, I see what you're saying. So we often think more is better until I get injured. And so if I'm not getting injured, what I'm doing must be right. There's two things. No, like that's like saying if I can afford to buy a TV, I should buy it. So if there's a TV for, I don't know, £3,000 and you have £3,000 in your bank account, you should buy it. Not necessarily. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, but it's the same with running. There's two things. Just because you're not getting injured doesn't mean that you're absorbing all the training that you're doing. The other side to it is that just because you're not getting injured doesn't mean that your body over time isn't collectively getting into a kind of like a mess, you could probably call it. And that's when, sure, you haven't got injured. Maybe you're quite robust. Maybe you could do. I joked on the massage table the other day. I had a sore back. I was in a car accident. It was hurting. And the massage therapist said to me, "Oh no, does that mean you can't train?" And I hope I don't live to regret this. But I said, "Monica, my back could be broken, and I'd still be able to run." But it doesn't mean that it's a good thing. People that, if you're listening and you don't really pick up injuries, it doesn't mean that you're not running your body into the ground, just into a bit of a mess. Think of a car that never breaks down, but it doesn't mean it's not a mess, you know? And running, you're looking for like optimal performance. And so optimal performance is keeping everything in check. So what I'm trying to, if I was better with video graphics and stuff, I would do a bar graph on the left, and as it goes up, that's fitness going up. This bar graph on the right, perhaps it's sitting at like 80%, for example, and that's how much is my body helping me race? Am I moving well? Is it strong? Etc., etc. The goal would be to get both up to 100. Just because you can handle training and you don't get injured, what a lot of people are doing is bringing the fitness up, but the body is going down. And so you actually end up needing to be fitter to create the same result, because it's fitness plus body, think engine plus vehicle, is a performance. Formula One, etc., etc. Having a brilliant engine, dropping it into a shit vehicle, it's not going to get you anywhere. So have a think about that. I can't believe I went off on that tangent all over my 74.3 miles, but I need to be really careful with probably volume, and what I'll also add to that is volume with intensity. Just because I can handle it doesn't mean that I'm absorbing it, and just because I can handle it doesn't mean that my body, this bar graph on the right, isn't gradually going down. And so that's worth sort of thinking about. Last week I gave myself, I think, a 2 or 3 out of 10 for gym. So one of the big emphasis this week was, well, the week just gone, and one of the big emphasis was getting gym back in the program. And so I added gym in twice. Gym at the moment is gym's just changed. Gym at the moment was very basic, so hip control, glute stuff. I did upload a video, you can see the rehab routine. It basically, if I look after my hips, everything stays in a pretty good place. That's kind of where I get my problems, is around the sort of hips. My gym was glute bridges, this kind of stuff, but fact of the matter is, I got in the gym twice. I should be doing gym 2 to 3 times a week, absolutely without fail. The next month or two, I now have a full gym program in place, but I can't talk about that till next week's recap, because technically I started that on Monday, and this is last week's recap. But gym's going to change, but this week for gym I'm going to give myself a 7 out of 10 instead of 2 out of 10. The training itself was far better. Things are progressing in terms of splits. So splits are getting faster, which is great. I'm still swapping between super shoes and non-super shoes. Honestly, if I ever get the feeling that I want to wear the super shoes, that's actually the day that I don't. And I'm just going to set this down for a second. I felt very tense because I'm trying to hold the iPad, and if I get that like feeling that I want to wear the super shoes, I almost see it as like a laziness. And I'll tell you an example. I was on a run this morning, there'd been heavy rain, I was running on like dirt, and you know when there's heavy rain, there's dirt, it kind of becomes like clay, and it was sticking to my shoes, and I kept wanting to stop and get the sort of like clay off my shoes. And then I was like, no, like, basically I was like, sure it's a bit harder, but running's hard, so just deal with it. When I go to a session and I have that feeling like, oh, I'd love to wear the super shoes today, I don't, because I like to just make running tough. I went through this phase of, if it was windy and it was raining and it was horrible weather, instead of like getting upset by it, and instead of like backing down, I kind of charged into it, and I started trying to work with my psychology that if it kind of wanted to have these moments of weakness, I tried to flip it into a positive, and it worked. It gets you on start lines, and you're just a little bit like, it doesn't really matter what pops up today, because continuously over the last 3-4 months I've been making all these tough decisions, and I've been sort of hitting these front on rather than backing down, and I feel a bit tired today, I'm going to wear the super shoes, they're going to make me faster, they're going to make it easier. We should never be looking to make running easier unless it's a very calculated decision because of injury, etc., etc. I need the iPad. All right, so gym is getting a 7 out of 10. Training, I'm going to give it training's probably going to get an 8 out of 10. I was really good with everything except for the aerobic power session, which I think was last Monday. The aerobic power session, I was brilliant for 4 or 5 reps, and then I pushed too hard, and so my lactate went up a bit higher. But it was great for like aerobic power. You're pushing a bit harder. It's not threshold. It's that little bit above threshold, and it works really well for me. My body moves on. I think before I ran 209. Someone's going to comment now. What do I run for a marathon? Before I ran really well in the marathon and the half marathon, I used aerobic power a lot. I didn't realize back then, but when I look back at the data, I see a lot of training in that sort of area and around those sort of heart rates that hits it. And so it's no surprise that, change that, it looks like it really helps me doing that kind of stuff. There's going to be a tip in there that says anytime you've raced well, start to have a think about what you did before that race. Why did you race well? What was better? What sort of training were you doing? What sort of intensities were you hitting in training? Where was your headspace at? Start to think about it. I think we do these races, we move on, and we don't even really think or process, well, what maybe created that great result. So Monday was the aerobic power. Like I said, I was brilliant for half of it, and then I think I pushed a little bit too hard. It's natural. It was getting harder. I probably had to work a bit harder just to hold the same pace. I even talked about in the YouTube video that I uploaded that sometimes it's actually easier to just get after it than it is to hold back a little bit, which is so strange because it should be easier to hold back, but runners are interesting. Tuesday was just a easy run. Wednesday, if you watch my video, maybe it was the aerobic power video. Yeah, it was. I actually talked about how my legs were kind of giving me problems. So on Wednesday, I added in 6 times 15-second hills. That's kind of works neuromuscular power. If in training your heart rate and the effort level isn't adding up, i.e. you feel like you're working pretty hard, but you shouldn't be because your heart rate's not that high, it might be a leg thing, which means you can add in some strides or some hills. I did 6 times 15-second hills. That adds in a bit of neuromuscular power. The next time I do the aerobic power session, it will be interesting if I handle it a bit better. Thursday was 10 by a K, but just at threshold. I went to Camp Verde, didn't wear super shoes. I'm a bit annoyed about this session because here's a tip. If things are progressing and you can feel that it's progressing, don't get greedy. I obviously got greedy and I wanted things to progress quicker, and so I thought I was going to drop down elevation is one thing. I thought because I was dropping down elevation I'd be really quick, and I also thought because I'm at like week 3 of the training that things like would have moved on. So yeah, I the lactate here says 2.7. I actually probably needed it to be around 2 or under 2. So yeah, maybe I need to drop this to like a 6 out of 10 for training this week, because that's 2 sessions that yeah, I went too quick. What you're going to notice with me is that I'll never brag about paces. I might eventually. I hope I can eventually. But at the moment, I will purely brag about nailing the session, which I did yesterday, but we can't talk about that at the minute. Friday was a double run. That's something I was really good at this week, was running twice. My tip on that would be use the time that you have. And so use your time wisely. And what I mean by that is just, I am going to talk about this week, but I just have to now. Last night, I went for dinner a bit early, probably like 6 p.m. And I hadn't doubled. And I had all these reasons not to double run. And then I just went, no, you should go do a double run. And I had obviously just ate 3 of the most marvelous tacos ever. And so, yeah, but the run actually wasn't bad. But in your head, you're like, oh no, I can't go for a run. I've just had dinner. It's gone 6 o'clock. Nonsense. Better to go and do the run, maybe a bit slower. Maybe you'll have a bit of a stitch because you just ate all that dinner. It will still look better in the training diary than not existing at all. And so it might always be perfect. It might not always be perfect, sorry. But get it done. Because you don't, once the 24 hours of the day are gone, you don't get to do it again. That one good decision led to me coming back and making more good decisions, but we'll talk about that next week. And that's not me teasing you. I actually just, it's difficult not to talk about this week when I'm doing this week, but it's last week's. Okay. Friday, a couple of easy runs. Nothing strange or startling, just not steady, just very easy. Needed to recover. Saturday was great. God, that's a big day. Saturday was 16 miles. I can get rid of the iPad now. So Saturday was 16 miles. I uploaded a YouTube video called Speed, Working on Your Speed. It's a session that was introduced to me a long time ago. I was always told to keep some form of speed in the program. Speed and power. I was told if I do too much endurance work and I don't combine speed and power, that I would eventually dig a hole for myself. That's what a coach said. If I do, my body can handle it. Basically, he thought I'd fall into a well of fatigue if I just did endurance, hard long runs, all this kind of stuff. But he also said that if you don't keep power and speed in your program, you almost can't bring the best out of yourself. I'm not a physiologist all the time. Neuromuscular power is, if you Google it, you have 3 energy systems, I believe, and it's neuromuscular power is one of them. Neuromuscular endurance. It's not neuromuscular endurance. It's something about the nerves and the muscles, a connection between possibly the nerves and the muscle fibers. Yeah, it's above my pay grade, I'm sorry, but let me just tell you that when I keep speed and power in the program, I can sustain higher heart rates for longer. That's about as much as I can give you. That's the application. I can't explain why. Maybe you can recruit more muscle fibers. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I just know it's worth doing it. Saturday nailed it, slowed down the 1K active recovery, didn't push the 200s as fast. It was kind of like 32 to 34, but I'm doing it on like a road, just like a straight road. Sometimes it's a bit uphill, sometimes it's a bit downhill. If I was on a track, 30 to 32, no problem, nice and smooth, feels great. Bit different on the road, but I just have to drop the ego a bit and just roll with it. The 1K active recovery, noticed my heart rate was a lot lower, and I just enjoyed that. I didn't, because it was lower, I didn't like suddenly push the pace, but I just enjoyed the heart rate being lower and kept it as it was. That's like a 10 out of 10 day. There's a tip in there too that sometimes just because something's a bit easier, we naturally have this, oh, I need to push, I mustn't be getting any benefit. No, there's plenty of hard days. Just embrace that easier day. I'm gonna get a little glass of water because I've drunk too much coffee today and my mouth's all dry. So 1 second. All right, so I'm back. And so that was Saturday. Saturday night, I did a good double, nice and easy, didn't push. Um, I noticed sometimes I talk, not sometimes, these recaps are like how things are going in terms of like splits and but I just noticed it's the more you're out there training within your own capabilities, things just get better. I noticed the body moving better. I noticed that when I was out there training, even the reps, it just felt better. And that was really cool. Actually, last Monday when I was going to do those Ks, like I did upload a video about that and I was almost like nervous. Like, can I still push this hard? I haven't pushed this hard in a while. How's this going to go? Maybe I should change the session. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. Sometimes I used to blame ADHD for that, but I just think it's tough, you know? But it's mad how much we like doubt ourselves, but every time we sort of get it done, you know? You'd think at some point you'd be like, hey, I know you keep doubting yourself about this stuff, but hey, buddy, you keep getting this done, you know? You're pretty good at this. And so, yeah, so now we're on Sunday. In terms of work-life balance, I think it was a bit better. It's difficult for me not to push the running school, I suppose you could say. And anyone listening that doesn't know about that, I made a decision probably last November. No, I think it was October. I had to burp. I didn't know if I wanted to still run. And so I started the working venture of the master class and you know all the lectures and all this sort of stuff, the online running school. And it's it's really difficult for me to just understand that I can get up, go for a run, come home, you know, do some stretching, nap, have another coffee and go for another run. This getting back into this routine of being like the full-time athlete and trainer for the Olympics, that's probably been the toughest part because it naturally eats me alive a bit knowing that hey, I could market this school and this is a really good product and this could benefit a lot of runners, and it's difficult for me to just sit still. And then I find myself driving to the coffee shop. What can I do? What can I work on? How can I do this? How can I do that? And then I'm like, why don't you just go home and Normatec and recover, you know? This week was better, way better than previous weeks, so way less hours sitting in front of the laptop. Sometimes resting from that stuff is just for the psychology, just slowing things down and just letting it just reset and calm down. And so probably 5 out of 10. I hope it's going up. I can't remember last week, but probably a 5. I was still doing quite a bit of work. I hope the day in the life eating wasn't last week because that was a lot of work. Oh, I really hope you can correct me on that one, but that was about a 10-11 hour day of editing. Oh no. Oh boy. This is an honesty channel. But I'm trying. I'm definitely trying. I love it. And so I'm going to contradict myself a bit, but don't judge yourself on everything that you do. As a runner, runners set these rules, right? And this is a brilliant tip. I love this one. And we set these rules, and rules are something that you've engraved into your head that says, an example, if you want to race well in your next race, you can't ever eat chocolate. If you want to race well in your next race, you must sleep 9 hours every night. If you want to run well in your next race, you cannot drink any alcohol. If you want to run well in your next race, you cannot possibly be out after 11 p.m. at night. You set these rules because of things you hear and see and maybe experience, but some of the rules are bullshit. And some of my own rules, I often judge myself quite harshly if I'm breaking them. and the rule could be like bullshit in the first instance. So I try not to beat myself up about it. I've really enjoyed YouTubey type stuff. I've really enjoyed video editing. I've really enjoyed trying to bring some of the filming that I'm doing, you could probably say, to life, to help people and document the journey and this sort of stuff. But it might get to the point that I need to start setting, not rules, but I need to just do a day plan where it's kind of like this time to this time is run and focus. This is when you're allowed to work. After this time, 7 p.m. for example, no more work, no matter what. If you've ever started a new business, you'll appreciate this, but I'm still at that phase where like it feels like I'm being chased by the boogeyman and I'm like, I need to fix that, and I actually have to remind myself sometimes, no, like you can do it tomorrow. Like I've done such a good job, I've worked so hard on all this stuff that, yeah, but I need to put that plan in place, and that's how we're going to bring the 5 up to like a 8 or a 9. It'll get to an 8 or a 9. I can still do probably 2 or 3 hours a day, no problem. At the minute it's just more, and it's not even sometimes that it's more, it's just the when. 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, because of the time difference, that's when I'm maybe sorting out a thumbnail for YouTube or a bloody editing thing, and it's like, it's 9:30 at night, buddy. You're in the school. I'm the one giving tips on sleep, and I'm the one saying from 8 o'clock onwards the focus should be sleep and not work. I'm bloody breaking my own rules. Maybe I need to take the bloody running school. Then on Sunday, this is where you'll kill me. Sunday I did an easy run, but I did have to take care of some business, and believe it or not, in last week's recap, I had talked about this, but then I took it out because I didn't want to put pressure on myself. I basically said in last week's recap that I had to come and empty out an apartment in Hawaii. I had left stuff, boxes, Amazon stuff, just a lot of stuff. And it was just the right thing to do. That's all I can say. It just felt like the right thing to do. Part of it was, yes, I should go do it because it's really important. So on Sunday I flew to Hawaii. The other part was, obviously I have ADHD. When I do 4 weeks up a mountain, I get a bit like itchy. Me and my therapist, Michael Gervais, we used to call it controlled chaos. Controlled chaos is, the example we used to give was, well, I think I actually made this up, but let's say you've got an American footballer and he keeps getting bad press, and he goes and he parties at the weekends. He goes to Vegas, for example, and he gets all this bad press, and then he comes back and he trains and he's hungover at the start of the week, but then at the end of the week he goes and plays and he's amazing, right? And the coaches think, if we could get him to stop going to Vegas, God, he'd be way better. He'd be amazing. Think how good he is now. Oh, imagine how good he's going to be when we stop him going to Vegas. And then they stop him going to Vegas, and he shows up on Monday and he's not hungover, and he trains all right. But over the next couple of weeks, a part of him that was just a part of him, he wasn't going to Vegas for no reason. He loses that part of himself, and he's not as good on the pitch. And it's like, it's confusing. I have to accept, and this is where I'll not beat myself up, every 4 or 5 weeks, I'll probably throw a bit of a spanner in the works. Sometimes I'll do 6 weeks up the mountain, sometimes 8 weeks. But every now and again, I'll come on this recap and I'll go, oops. And that's controlled chaos. I used to try to justify it to myself, everybody around me. I'm just me. So what I'm trying to do a better job of, discipline is like this, right? And then as it starts to slip, it can slip into a landslide. So with your controlled chaos, if you're that kind of person and every now and again you drop a TNT, just catch yourself that you've done it Don't judge yourself, don't beat yourself up, and then get discipline back in a good direction. So I made sure that, yes, you've traveled, get hydrated, get a good night's sleep, then make sure when you're doing the training it's at the exact right intensity, because this is when it's vital after things like travel. And also don't miss any of the training and don't change the plan. So sometimes when you throw in one of these TNTs or a dynamite, whatever you want to call it, then you start changing everything. This gets changed, this gets changed, this gets changed. Try to bring it all back together. And so in a couple of days, back up the mountain, and things will get back into that rhythm. And when I do next week's recap, I will be so happy that I came and took care of business, because this bedroom was a mess. Boxes, clothes, Under Armour suitcases, Under Armour new shoes. It wasn't the best thing for my running, of course not. Wasn't the best thing for being up the mountain a bit longer for the running and all the rest of it. But sometimes in life you just have to do what you gotta do. Sometimes business side of things, like do the right thing, comes first. Hey, I'm not going to pay rent anymore. Hey, I'm moving out. And by the way, I'm not coming to empty out the room. Come on. So, control chaos, but it ended up productive. I had a massage this week. I had dry needles in my hip because I needed to start looking after that a bit more. But it was a good week. Another week where things got back in a good direction. I started getting a little bit excited about the prospect of racing. This is the first time I've mentioned racing. How this is going to work is I'm going to do 8 weeks, like this current training that I'm in right now, this sort of like 9-day cycle. The 9-day cycle is like threshold, that speed session with the 200s and the K, back to threshold, then I do aerobic power, and then back to threshold. That's it. I'll do that about 6 times. Then I'll do 8 weeks very specific to race a 10K, and I'll race a 10K on the track, I think May 8th. I might do a road race before that in America just to shock the system a little bit. And then after that, I'll repeat what I'm doing right now is actually like a pre-marathon build. So I want to repeat that after having done the 10K, and hopefully the numbers will be a bit better. The numbers at the moment don't say 208. The speeds, the lactates, they do not say 208. But I'm hoping after doing it 6 times, 6 cycles, then the full 10K plan, then back to the 9-day cycle, I'm hoping the numbers in that next cycle start to say, hey, we could be on to something here. Being full transparent, if I don't run close to between 28 minutes and 28:15 to 20, I don't know that 208 exists. It's tough. It's really tough. And so we'll find something out. But there's no pressure there. It's just, we'll just start to find things out. Why I say that is because I'll have had about 16 weeks at that point, and it usually doesn't take me 16 weeks. And so we'll know that it's something else. Maybe I'm getting older. Where's the motivation? You think you're trying, are you really trying? We'll learn something. Then you repeat that pre-marathon build, and then you do a 12-week build up to Berlin. And then you get to go and race. Just because it might not say 208 doesn't mean I give up. I figure it out. I figure out what I need to change. Running's just giving you answers. Hey, is what I'm doing working? Hey, is the training I'm doing working? Hey, is my application to training, the lifestyle, the recovery stuff, nutrition, is it working? If it's not, and a time trial doesn't go well, a race doesn't go well, fix it. That's what I do. I figure it out. I write a list of 10 things that I can work on, and I do it. Most of the time. So that's everything. I know I'm pushing it, but if you do, have a look at the running school if you haven't already. It really helps me. It pays for Noble's wages, who's been so good videoing and putting stuff up online. And take care. I hope you found something in there useful, and that's another week done.
If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget you can check out joggingroom.com. There's warm-up routines, activation routines, all those running drills that you've just seen. 12 hours of tips and tutorials, over 60 lectures, nutrition, recovery, strength conditioning, all things running. Check it out. You won't be disappointed, and I guarantee you'll run better if you join the class.